Hello everybody and welcome. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to make a counter tactic and then what to look for in a match to see if it's working. And let's get started with counter strategy. When making a tactic, you always want to think about how to create space to take advantage of your opponent. You can create space by using player roles, your formation, and tactical instructions. But there's another way you can create space, and that's to let your opponent do it for you. This is the philosophy behind a counterattack. Your team is going to sit back, invite pressure from the opposition, and then exploit the space that they have created for you. And I consider there to be three important elements to making a counter tactic. The first is that you need a formation that has a solid defensive shape, since you're going to be defending for a large portion of the match. Next, you need to invite pressure with your tactical instructions. This can be done mainly using a combination of the low block and low defensive line team instructions. Finally, you need attacking threats to provide the counter and attack the open space. The idea is to move the ball quickly up the field to ensure that the opponent does not have time to get reset. This will be done with a combination of player roles and team instructions. We're going to go over two different counter tactic ideas with two different teams in today's video. The first team will be one of the common ways people think of the counterattack, and that's when you're a bottom table team and you're trying to get a result against a bigger club. The second tactic we'll look at is when you're a bigger club facing a smaller club. Often a weaker team will sit back in a defensive shell, but a counter allows you to draw them out. So let's get started with our first tactic example, the small club facing the big club. As we get started, be aware that a counter tactic is a very dangerous game to play. It's one of the highest risk-reward tactics that you can use. This is because you are voluntarily inviting pressure in your own half, so any mistakes can have drastic consequences. The smaller your club and the bigger your opponent, the less margin of error you have, so your tactical decisions are very important. However, inviting pressure means a bigger club will push more players forward in an attempt to break you down. This can be a rare chance to hit a better team when they are at their weakest. And the nature of inviting pressure means you are going to give up shots, but you want to limit the opponent's shots around the penalty area or right in front of your goal. Our first club is Heidenheim in the Bundesliga. We have a match at home versus Stuttgart, so let's talk about how we can be solid defensively while still providing a threat forward. Since our margin of error is small, our formation needs to be as good as we can get it right from the start. Before you play a match, you may have seen the opposition tab. This allows us to see what formation that Stuttgart is going to play, a 4-2-3-1. Because of this, I chose a 4-4-2 with two defensive midfielders. This is not only a great formation for counterattacks, but the two defensive midfielders can help shut down any play through the attacking midfield area. Now that we have our formation, let's look at some team instructions. The first is the mentality we're using, the defensive mentality. If we look at the description, I want to point out three things. The first is keep men behind the ball. Next is frustrate the opponent. And finally, quick passing to score goals on the counter. The defensive mentality and the passing instructions means that we're going to sit back in our own half, and then when we get the ball, move it forward quickly. Finally, we have the out of possession team instructions. A low block and low defensive line is used to invite that pressure. I also have the trigger press set to less often. This means my players will be less likely to be out of position when trying to win the ball. Now let's talk about the inside trap. With this instruction, we're going to try and restrict their buildup through the wider areas and force them into the center. If we can win it back in the central areas, we'll have a greater chance at starting a counter. And the invite crosses is going to do the opposite. As they move into our final third, it's going to allow them into the wider areas and our shape will become more compact. What these team instructions are doing is protecting the center areas of the field. This is important defensively, but it's also a great area of the field to win the ball back. So when the opponent is building up possession, we're going to be very wide and try to force that ball into central areas. And when they move into our attacking third, the defense is going to constrict around the ball carrier, either trapping them or forcing the ball out wide away from the area in front of our goal. Also, obviously, with inviting crosses, it's ideal to have tall center backs who can deal with the crosses coming in. I have one who's 6'2" with a 14 jumping reach, and the other is 6'4" with a 17 jumping reach. Next, the player roles. I've gone for fullbacks, who are more focused on defending compared with a wingback. The anchor and segundo volante can play any style you want and are the perfect defensive midfield pair. The anchor provides a holding midfielder, a crucial part of any counter tactic, since they will provide a safety outlet for your team. And the segundo volante will provide the trailing runs into the penalty box. On the right side, we have a wide midfielder. Looking at the description, he's going to get into dangerous attacking positions without compromising his defensive capabilities. Sounds like what I want. He's on the defend duty to offer protection as the segundo volante on his side pushes up the field in the counterattack. On the other side, a wide playmaker is going to naturally be a playmaker for us and will be our creative outlet out on the wing. As for the striker, I debated on a poacher or an advanced forward, but went with the advanced forward, which means we lose a little space creation but gain some additional help in the build-up. Finally, the target forward is going to provide another outlet for the team in case we need to clear the ball in an emergency. He'll also be an aerial threat in the box. Alright, we've got our team, formation, and instructions. Let's see what happens during the match. Our first clip comes in the 3rd minute with their goalie about to start their possession. As the ball goes into the midfield, you can see the example of our inside trap forcing them inside. My 2 players are positioned on the sideline, funneling them into the center. We win the ball and our counter starts. It fizzles out, but that's the idea we're going for. Here's an example of our counter in the 6th minute. They have the ball in the attacking midfield area and we force the turnover. When we gain possession, they have 6 players in and around the penalty area and nobody in their half of the field. The direct passing and high tempo gets the ball up the field quickly. It doesn't work out, but again, this is what we're looking for. In the 7th minute, this is the type of shot that you want to give up when playing defensively. It's from a distance with a defender in the way. I mentioned earlier that when you're playing as an underdog, you have a small margin of error, meaning you want to look for those small mistakes that you can fix in your tactics. And when fixing tactics, I always use the famous saying, 1's an accident, 2's a trend, 3's a problem. Meaning if you see the same error over and over again, then it's time to change. This highlight is from the 19th minute and we have a goal kick. My goalie couldn't kick it long enough to get it to the target forward and we nearly give up the counter, but thankfully we recovered. This was the 3rd time this type of goal kick happened and we can't afford to waste possession like this. So I added instructions to distribute to my defenders and play out of defense. This should hopefully curtail any wasteful kicks like that. In the 27th minute, here's another example of our formation and how wide it is. We have 2 players forcing play inside. And then we have our opposite fullback holding width at the bottom. They try to go out wide, but our trap forces them inside. When they get it into the attacking midfield area, all of my players are completely within the width of the penalty box. The ball is forced wide and our counter starts. That counter led to a throw-in. And that throw-in led to a corner. And that corner led to a goal. We scored a goal off a corner kick, yes, but it started with how we set up our trap during their possession. That led to a turnover, which led to our counter, a throw-in, and so on. Those little small plays add up, and during the course of a match, a season, and a career, they can have a huge difference. In the 40th minute, here's the change in our goalie distribution. He passes it short to our center back, and we get a counterattack out of it. After halftime in the 49th minute, we invite the cross in. Naturally, our defenders can't stop their striker from heading it in and they tie it 1-1. A little bit after the goal, here's another example of us quickly moving the ball through their defense. Even though this is a goal kick, basically all of their players are in our half of the field. We move the ball up the field and eventually get a cross in. If I'm being honest, it was a pretty drab second half, but both of us are able to get some final chances with the match closing out. The match ends 1-1 and I'll take that all day against a bigger club. I do want to point out something with the total shots though, because not all shots and XG stats are created equal. They had more shots than us, but a lot of them were from outside the penalty box and not a real threat. We had fewer shots, but all of ours were inside the penalty box and nearly right in front of the goal. We gave up more shots, but I felt we had at least the same number of quality shots. Overall, I'm happy with the tactic and how the team played. Performances like that can keep you from getting relegated. Now, if you're up for it, we still have another tactic to go over, so let's head to our other team. The other reason to use a counter is when you're a big club facing a small club, because we've all played those matches where another team parks the bus for 90 minutes. Here's an example of that where we're in possession attacking the opponent. All of their players are below the halfway line. They have all my players covered out wide, my striker is covered too, and my midfielder is being marked so closely you can barely see him. We try to get in a cross, but the attack doesn't amount to anything. But using a counter means you will naturally draw them out of their shape and then you can attack them. From that same match, the opponent has the ball in the corner. All of my players are playing back as well, but that means we've drawn them in. Even their center backs are closing into the attacking midfield. When we win the ball, getting it up the field quickly means we can take advantage of their unsettled shape. So that's the idea. With the first tactic as an underdog, you are playing a more defensively sound game, frustrating the opponent and trying to take advantage of the few chances you get. With a top club in the second tactic, you are tricking the opponent to bring you the ball and then attacking that space behind them. Your players are better, so you are better able to take advantage. And those better players means you also have more margin for error when choosing your tactic and player roles. I chose Leverkusen for this example, as they have one of the best counter-attacking teams in FM24. Our tactic is a 4-3-3, and the idea is the same. Play with a low defensive line and a low block, and then use the counter transition. The difference is this time, we're going to use the attacking mentality to be more aggressive in how we attack that space. A deep lying forward is great for a counterattack. They're going to drop back towards the ball when you get possession. This is great for linking the defense to the attack. A Metsala and central midfielder are two excellent options. They'll both attack in the final third, but do it in different ways. And the winger will stay out wide, getting in crosses and giving the Metsala room to work. And normally I don't like using a wingback and a winger on the same side, but both of those players are better in those roles. So I chose the complete wingback, who's going to help out a little more in the center midfield areas instead of strictly staying out wide. Our inverted winger is Jonas Hoffmann, and we already know how good he is, and our other wingback will provide the width, crosses, and additional attacking threat on that side. Our match is at home against Freiburg, so let's see how this tactic does. We start the match in the 5th minute, where we've gained possession from the opponent's header. The opponent had been attacking, so they have 4 players up the field and only 2 in their own half. It only takes us 3 passes to get a shot in on goal. In the 13th minute, from our throw-in, we see the benefit of being a top team. Sometimes it's the players that create the goal. This is in the 28th minute. Their goalie has the ball and they want to build out from the back. We have 5 defenders in our own half, and our front 5 aren't terribly concerned with winning the ball back yet. They get the ball onto the wing and progress into the attacking midfield area, but again we've sprung the trap. They have 5 players up the field and only 2 players back in defense. We move the ball quickly for another quality chance. The philosophical differences between the 2 tactics are not very different, meaning the tactic we went over with Heidenheim and this tactic. This Leverkusen tactic is a little different in formation and some of the team instructions, but the basic idea is the same. But hopefully you see the difference in how much a team's quality can affect the way a tactic plays out. A good team with good players are better at taking advantage of space. And this applies to the defensive side too. They're able to work the ball into the box, but it was never really a threat because of how Leverkusen is able to track back and recover. Here's another example of that. They have a goal kick, win the initial header, and get a breakaway on goal, but our center back is able to clear the threat. But with all that said, top clubs will make mistakes too. With Heidenheim, I was talking about how little plays can add up to get you a goal, well this applies to giving up goals as well. This is the 59th minute where we had a corner that was headed out. My complete wingback makes a pass that isn't on target, and it drags my center back out wide. The center back decides to dribble towards the byline and get in a cross. This player right here is my anchor, who is moved over to cover for the central defender. We get in a failed cross, no big deal. As the goalie is about to kick it, look where my anchor is. He and the wingback have covered for the central defender and formed our back 4. This is actually a pretty cool example of positional play, but the problem is the goalie has kicked it right to them. The opponent wins the header, which means my anchor is still out of position, which means we don't have a holding defensive midfielder. They have 2 players free in a dangerous area. None of my defenders read the play, and my goalie isn't quick enough. That goal happened because of a misplaced pass off of our corner kick. It happens fast. But in the 75th minute, we get a fantastic strike from outside of the penalty area to restore our lead. As we approach the end of the match, the last play we're going to look at is a longer sequence that shows the difference between a counter tactic and other styles. For example, the gegenpress tactic will tell your players to win the ball back immediately after they lose it. But with a counter, once you get that initial scoring chance or maybe you lose the ball, you're telling your team to get back in their defensive shape because you need to draw the opponent out again and then you attack. Right now, their center back has the ball and my team is hanging out waiting to win it. We get the bad pass and immediately attack and get that one great chance. It eventually fizzles out, so we drop back and try it again. They try to build out with their goalie, and we get the ball and immediately attack again. That key pass just isn't on target, but we still get a good chance out of it. The match finishes and we win 2-1. We had a lot of shots as you can see, but for the purposes of this video, I just wanted to focus on the ones that were mostly related to counterattacks. A counter tactic is not perfect by any means. Sometimes the constant pressure your team is under can force you into mistakes, and as fatigue and the match wears on, these can become even worse. And again, this is a bigger issue if you have a smaller club. As an example, this is our hide and high midfielder that we used in the example match. But I want to point out his composure and decision rating of 10. This is very below average for the Bundesliga. This means that if he's put under pressure, even in ideal situations, he won't make the best decision with the ball. Here's a different match against Frankfurt. This is late in the match and we have the ball in the corner, and it's not dissimilar to what we've seen in earlier highlights. But here's that defender. His low composure and low decision attributes, in addition to fatigue, means he plays a terrible ball into the middle of the field. So I find that using a counter tactic is best implemented as part of one of your 3 tactical styles. Then you can switch from your normal one to your counter tactic as needed during a match. Let's say we're doing a save as Leverkusen, and our primary tactic is this possession-based one, something where we have a higher press and a higher line. Well, if we're playing a team that has parked the bus, we can easily switch to our counter tactic on the fly without needing to change our formation or player roles. This can help a lot when you're playing those stubborn defensive teams. Then, once you score as you're closing out the match, you can switch back to the possession one to hold on to the lead. Your idea of success will be different based on the club and the league you're in, but a counter style can be used by all different types of squads, even if it's only in moderation. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.